The sound of bare feet striking the mat echoed like a soft drumbeat. Inside the warm gym, sunlight cut through tall windows, painting gold across the floor. The students moved in rhythm, shouts sharp and loud. Every kick landed with a grunt, every stance timed to the coach's call. But Nia moved differently. She didn't shout the way the others did, didn't perform like she was proving something. Her motions were quieter, but every angle, every pivot was locked in, like her body remembered something deeper than drills. She was 14, small for her age, skin dark like polished mahogany, hair braided tight, face focused, unbothered. A boy paused mid-form. "Where did she learn that?" he muttered. Another voice laughed. "New girl's got some secret training." Nia finished the kata and stepped into line. She didn't look at anyone, didn't need to. "Johnson!" the coach snapped. She raised her head. "Yes, sir." Front and center. Nia walked forward. Coach Renshaw was tall, broad, with sharp features and a shaved head. His white GI looked like it had never seen sweat. Arms folded, he stared down at her like something didn't fit. "Where'd you learn that form?" he asked. Nia hesitated just a second. "My grandfather taught me." The room rippled with small reactions, a few glances, a smirk in the corner. "Your grandfather?" Renshaw asked. "That's not part of our curriculum." "No, sir. He taught me before I joined." "And what exactly is he? Some YouTube sensei?" Nia shook her head. "No, sir. He was in the military. A 4-star general. He taught me old-school martial forms, discipline, balance." Someone snorted. "Oh, come on," a girl whispered loud enough to hear. "A general teaching karate?" A boy laughed. "What's next? Her uncle's the president?" "She lying, bro. Ain't no way." Coach Renshaw's face tightened. "A 4-star general, huh?" "Yes, sir," Nia answered. Her voice was steady now. He leaned in, his voice lower. "You know what lying does to a team? It breaks trust. And in this dojo, trust is everything." "I didn't lie," she said quietly. "Say that louder." "I didn't lie." "You think this is a joke?" His voice rose. "You think throwing around military rank gets you respect?" She stood firm. "I didn't ask for respect. I just answered the question." He stared at her for a long second. Then suddenly, the sound cracked like a whip across the gym. His open hand struck her cheek. Nia's face snapped slightly to the side. Her skin bloomed red. Her body didn't flinch. No gasp. No sound. Just silence. Not from her. From the entire room. No one moved. No one breathed. The air itself seemed to pull back. She didn't cry. Her fists curled tightly. Her eyes stared forward. Wide, unblinking. Coach Renshaw stood still, his chest rising, waiting for her to break. She didn't. The other students looked at the floor. Some glanced at each other, unsure. No one stepped in. No one said her name. The gym had never been quieter. After a moment, Coach Renshaw spoke again, voice like gravel. "Back in line." Nia didn't nod, didn't answer. She turned slowly. Her footsteps were the only sound as she walked back, one pace at a time. Her hands stayed clenched, but her head didn't drop. She stepped into place at the end of the row. Her cheeks still burned, glowing beneath the overhead lights. But her eyes were the only thing louder than the slap. The summer heat hadn't eased by the time Nia unlocked her bike outside the dojo. Her fingers trembled slightly as they gripped the handlebars, but she didn't wait around. She pushed off the sidewalk and let the wheels roll fast, like speed alone could erase what had just happened. The slap still rang in her ears. Not the pain, that had faded. What stayed was the silence. The way every single person in that gym stood still. The way their eyes said nothing, while her face burned red. She wasn't expecting them to speak. But the fact that no one even looked her way afterward, that was louder than the hit. The wheels buzzed against the concrete. Her backpack shifted behind her shoulders. The dojo's noise was gone, replaced by the soft hum of tires and wind. But it didn't help. She kept hearing her own words over and over. He was a 4-star general. Her grandfather had never cared much for being called that. He didn't talk about the medals, didn't hang photos of his military days. But she had seen them. The framed letter from the White House. The dusty box of ribbons with names she couldn't pronounce. The photo of him standing with his hands behind his back, in uniform, next to a man wearing the same suit as the president. But none of it had mattered today. To them, she was just the black girl who thought she was special. The bike skidded slightly as she turned onto her street. The houses here were older. Small lawns, cracked sidewalks. The kind of neighborhood where people waved from porches and didn't ask too many questions. She liked that. Her grandfather's house was third from the corner. A flag hung faded near the porch rail. The garden was neat, always trimmed, but never flashy. She slowed her bike, dismounted, and rested it against the fence. He was out front, kneeling in the flower bed. A hose looped beside him, water trailing along the soil. His back was to her. Short cropped gray hair, squared shoulders, slow movements. "You're home early," he said without turning. She didn't answer. He stood up slowly, wiped his hands on an old towel, and turned toward her. His eyes found the mark on her cheek immediately. His face didn't change. No gasp, no rush, just quiet recognition. He didn't ask, "What happened?" He didn't say, "Are you okay?" He simply stepped aside and walked into the house. Nia followed. Inside, the air was cool and still. A fan clicked somewhere down the hallway. The kitchen light was off, but daylight bled through the window, cutting sharp lines across the table. Her grandfather opened a drawer and pulled out a small wooden box. He placed it in front of her. She knew that box. She'd seen it once when she was 8, before a school project on veterans. He never let her open it, only said, "Not yet." Now he slid it toward her. She opened it carefully. Inside, 3 rows of service medals, 1 folded flag, and a laminated card. United States Army, 4-star General, Leonard T. Warren. Her hands hovered over the medals but didn't touch. "They didn't believe me," she said softly. "I figured," he said. They laughed. "He hit me." "I know." She looked up. "You're not surprised." "I'm tired, not surprised." He pulled out one of the medals, laid it gently on the table. Bronze edges, faded ribbons. It looked heavy, even untouched. "You know what the problem is?" he asked, still not looking directly at her. "They didn't see me." "No," he said. "They saw you. They just didn't think you were worth standing for." She swallowed hard. "It's not new," he continued. "Used to get saluted overseas, then come home and be followed around grocery stores. You don't forget how that feels." Nia blinked fast. "They called me a liar," she whispered. "I know," he said again. She looked at the medal, then the flag. then him. "I don't want to go back," she said. He didn't nod, didn't object. He just stood and walked to the window, hands behind his back like he was standing at attention for something invisible. Then he said, quiet and even, "You will." That night, Nia lay in bed, eyes wide open, the ceiling fan spinning in lazy circles above her. The slap didn't echo anymore. What echoed now was her silence. How she stood there, fists clenched, while the others chose to disappear behind their own stillness. The worst part wasn't the hit. It was the way the air shifted afterward. Like the room had agreed, she didn't matter. She turned onto her side. Her cheek still felt warm, not from pain, but from the memory of being watched and ignored. Her voice had cracked when she said the truth. They didn't hear it, didn't want to. She reached toward the side table. The metal box still sat there from earlier. She hadn't put it away. In the hallway, she could hear her grandfather's footsteps. Steady, slow. He wasn't in bed either. He never slept early. The house was filled with quiet things. The kind of silence that only shows up in homes where people have learned how to carry their pain without talking about it. She sat up and walked into the hallway barefoot. The floor was cool under her feet. Down the hall, the light from his study bled faintly under the door. She didn't knock. He was standing there, flipping through an old photo album. On the desk, 3 newspapers were spread out. One had a folded flag on the cover. Another showed him, decades ago, standing on the tarmac with a row of soldiers behind him. "You ever wonder," he said without looking up, "why they think quiet people are lying?" She leaned against the doorframe. "They look at you," he said, "and if you're not shouting, they assume you're hiding something." She didn't answer. He turned the page. More photos. Military base. Men in camouflage. Medals pinned to uniforms. "I used to outrun bullets," he said softly, "but I could never outrun suspicion." She stepped closer. "Did they ever believe you?" "No," he said, "but some of them respected me anyway." She sat down across from him. "I don't think I want their respect anymore." He smiled faintly. "You never needed it." She looked down. Her voice was small. "Then why did it hurt so much?" He closed the album. "Because they didn't just call you a liar," he said. "They called you invisible." She blinked hard, trying not to let tears fall. "I told the truth," she whispered. "And one day," he replied, "they'll remember you didn't flinch when it cost you." He reached into the drawer and pulled out a photograph. Old, yellowed at the corners. She recognized it. It was her, age 6, in a tiny karate gi, standing beside him in uniform. Her smile was crooked. His hand rested gently on her shoulder. He slid the photo across the desk. "You were strong back then, too," he said. She traced the edge of the picture. "I don't want to just remember it. I want to feel that again." He stood, walked to the cabinet in the corner, and pulled out a tightly folded black cloth. When he set it down, she realized it was a belt, worn, faded, creased from years of tying and retying. He didn't hand it to her. He just laid it on the table beside the photo. "You don't wear this," he said, "to show who you are. You wear it to remember what it took to become that." Nia stared at it for a long moment, then looked up. "I want to go back," she said. "Not to win, just to finish what I started." Her grandfather nodded once. "Then we start tomorrow, before breakfast." She stood. "I want to show them," she said. Not because I need to, but because I want them to see. He picked up the metal box from the table and held it in one hand. Then, slowly, deliberately, he placed it inside her gym bag. "If they won't see you," he said, "they're going to see me." The next morning, the sky was pale blue with streaks of cloud like faded chalk. Nia stood on the porch, her gym bag at her feet, laces double-tied. Her uniform was the same one from the day before. The red mark on her cheek had softened into a dull warmth, but the burn underneath, that hadn't faded. Her grandfather stepped out behind her, already dressed, not in full uniform, but in a sharp, clean shirt tucked neatly into ironed slacks, his black boots polished. Around his neck hung his military ID. The 4 stars weren't visible, but they didn't need to be. He locked the door behind them. Neither said a word. They walked side by side down the street, her small frame beside his silent authority. A few neighbors glanced up. No one spoke, just quiet nods. By the time they reached the dojo, students were already warming up. Stretches, light sparring, nervous chatter. But all of it stopped when the 2 of them stepped inside. Nia didn't look around. She walked to her usual place and set down her bag. Her grandfather didn't sit in the observation area. He stood by the door, arms crossed, his posture like a flagpole planted in enemy ground. Coach Renshaw was tying his belt at the front of the mat. He looked up, froze. His jaw clenched, just slightly. Then he smirked. "We don't allow parents on the mat," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Nia's voice was clear. "He's not my father." Coach tilted his head. "Then, what is this? Round 2 of the story time?" "I didn't lie," she said. Murmurs flickered through the class. Coach stepped forward. "I told you, this dojo runs on truth and discipline, not fantasy." The general stepped in then. His voice didn't raise. It didn't need to. "You struck a child for answering a question. That's not discipline. That's weakness dressed as authority." Coach's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small black card, and handed it over. Military ID. Real. U.S. Army. 4 stars printed across the top. "General Leonard T. Warren," he said. A student at the back gasped. Another whispered, "Wait. What?" One boy pulled out his phone. Coach stared at the card. For a second, his hands trembled. Then he laughed. "So you're really her grandfather," he muttered. "Congratulations. Want me to roll out a red carpet?" The general didn't smile. "Number. I want you to understand what respect looks like when it walks through the door." Coach stepped closer, his face darkening. "You want an apology?" Nia spoke again. Calm. Director. "I want them to know the truth, that I wasn't lying, that you hit me for speaking." More students were listening now. Some had stopped stretching. A few had their arms crossed. One had begun recording. Coach looked around, noticing the shift. He turned to the general. "You want to prove something? Fine. Let's go. You and me. Right now." The general's face didn't move. "I don't spar for ego." Coach scoffed. "Then what? You here to give a speech?" The general stepped onto the mat. Students moved back. Instinctively. "I'm here because someone needs to remind them what standing up looks like." Coach pulled off his outer jacket. His chest rose and fell with fast breath. "All right, let's see what the Army teaches about karate." He charged without warning, fast, sharp, aggressive, years of practice behind every step. But the general didn't flinch. He shifted slightly, redirecting the first strike with one hand. The second punch grazed his shoulder. The third never landed. His palm met Renshaw's chest, flat and firm, and pushed him off balance. Not violent, just enough to send him stumbling. Coach growled, stepped in again. This time, the general's hand moved fast, cutting across in a precise ridge strike to the wrist. Not hard, just controlled. Then came the silence. The students were frozen. Coach took a step back, chest heaving. "Old man's got moves," he said, trying to laugh. The general took one step forward. "When you hit my granddaughter," he said quietly, "you weren't testing strength. You were trying to erase her voice." Coach said nothing. The general's eyes didn't blink. "And now that everyone hears her, you're afraid of what it says about you." Someone dropped a water bottle. No one picked it up. Coach didn't respond. He stepped off the mat. Nia stood still near the back. Her heart beat loud in her ears. Not from fear, from something else. The weight that had sat in her chest since yesterday had started to shift. As her grandfather stepped down, he didn't raise his arms, didn't nod, didn't demand applause. He simply walked over to her bag, zipped it up, and handed it to her. "You ready to go?" he asked. She looked him in the eye. "I'm ready to be seen." By the time they reached the sidewalk, the dojo door shut behind them with a quiet click. Neither of them said anything. The general walked steadily beside her, hands behind his back, steps like a metronome. Nia's mind spun faster than her feet. The way the class had gone silent. The way Coach Renshaw had backed off. The moment her grandfather stepped forward without raising his voice. But the room shifted anyway. She hadn't known what to expect. But it wasn't that. Across the parking lot, a student named Jordan stood still, phone still in hand, video still rolling. He didn't say a word either, just nodded at her once. That night, the video hit the internet. Not on a big channel, not some clickbait page, just a teenager posting what he'd witnessed. No music, no edits, just the raw clip. A black girl standing still. A slap. The silence. Then the general entering. And Coach Renshaw stepping back, exposed. No context, no titles, just real. It started slow. A few likes, then reposts. Then someone on TikTok added a caption, "He walked in like he owned time." By midnight, it was at 20,000 views. By morning, 400,000. Martial arts forums picked it up. Black community pages shared it. A retired U.S. Marine posted, "That wasn't self-defense. That was a masterclass in dignity." The hashtags lit up. Justice for Nia. Black discipline. General Warren. Dojo power abuse. Truth in silence. Even bigger accounts started breaking it down frame by frame. Veterans confirmed the uniform was legit. A JROTC instructor tweeted, "That's a real 4-star stance. Trust me. You don't forget that kind of posture." Meanwhile, Nia sat on her bed, the light from her phone screen glowing on her face. The video played again and again, not because she was obsessed, but because she almost couldn't believe it was real. The comments rolled in, "She didn't even blink. That's strength. Where's this dojo? Someone drop the address." Imagine being slapped for telling the truth, and then your grandfather casually dismantles your bully's entire image. She didn't respond. She didn't post. She just watched. And read. And felt something inside her. Something deep and quiet. begin to unfold. By noon, someone edited the clip with subtitles and clearer audio. They synced it to a slow instrumental beat. Now it wasn't just a video. It was a moment. That version hit 1.2 million in under 6 hours. Back at the dojo, things were different. Coach Renshaw didn't speak about what happened, but everyone else did. Parents started calling. One student dropped out. Another posted her own video. He used to make us spar until we cried, and we thought that was discipline. Then came the statement. The Martial Arts Association released a short post on their official site. We are aware of a recent video involving a senior instructor. An internal review has been initiated. We do not condone physical punishment or disrespect of students under any circumstances. Behind the scenes, administrators were in full panic mode. Emails flew. Screenshots circulated. Nia's name reached people she'd never met. The next day, an email came to the dojo's official inbox. Subject: formal review of instructor behavior. Urgent. Coach didn't share that part. But everyone felt it. He was quieter. He didn't shout warm-ups. He didn't even meet eyes. And when Nia walked in again, alone this time, every face turned toward her. Not laughing, not smirking. Just watching. She walked to her usual spot, dropped her bag, bowed to the mat, and the room bowed back. Not out of habit, out of awareness. Because now they knew. Coach Renshaw didn't show up the next morning. His name was still written on the whiteboard, but his shoes weren't at the door. His clipboard sat untouched on the desk, and no one touched the red belt he always draped across the chair. It hung there like a warning now, like a piece of evidence that hadn't been bagged yet. Nia walked into the dojo alone. No grandfather, no camera, just her. She placed her bag down and bowed toward the mat, her face calm, her posture solid. But the air inside the room was heavier. Not afraid, just aware. Everyone had seen the video, and if they hadn't, someone had told them. She didn't look for approval. She didn't need it anymore. Across town, inside the school district's administrative office, a meeting had already started. 2 chairs faced a screen. On the screen, the full clip played. No commentary, just raw footage. The slap, the silence, the man in uniform stepping forward. The calm dismantling of a man who had called himself a leader. The principal didn't speak until the end. "Do you think this is acceptable behavior?" she asked, without looking at Renshaw. He didn't answer right away. His arms were crossed, but not in defiance, in defense, as if he was bracing for something he couldn't block. "I was enforcing discipline," he finally muttered. The coordinator leaned forward. "Discipline is not assault." Renshaw looked up. "I didn't mean to hit her that hard." "That's not the point," the principal replied, voice sharp now. "You hit a child. Then you belittled her. And then you dismissed a decorated United States Army general standing in your gym, as if his presence was irrelevant." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "There are no edits that make this look better," she said. "This wasn't taken out of context. The context is the problem." He stared at the floor. "You're not under criminal review," she added, "but you've lost the trust of your students. And us." A long pause. "Do I need to resign?" he asked. No one answered directly, but the resignation letter was signed within the hour. Back in the dojo, a substitute instructor stood awkwardly at the front of the room. Young, unsure, kind voice. He didn't bark orders, didn't raise his voice. He asked more than he told. and when he asked who would like to lead warm-ups, 3 students turned to look at Nia. She didn't rush forward. She waited, then nodded once and stepped up. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. "Let's start with breathing," she said. They did. After class, a girl from the front row walked up and stood beside her. She didn't speak. She just nodded once and whispered, "He made us feel small." Another boy followed. Sometimes it felt like we were being trained to fight, not to stand for anything. One by one, they started talking. No speeches, no shouting, just truth finally finding a voice. The substitute coach stood back, letting it happen. He didn't interrupt. He just watched. Someone erased Renshaw's name from the board, and in its place, someone else wrote, "Respect is not fear." No one erased that. Later that evening, Nia sat on the porch steps. The sun was setting slow. Her grandfather came out with 2 glasses of lemonade, handed her one, and sat beside her. "You were calm today," he said. She nodded. People listened. He looked at her for a moment, then faced forward. They weren't listening yesterday. They are now. He sipped his drink. It won't last forever. I know. But you did what you came to do. She nodded again. A car passed down the street. She looked at him, quiet for a second, then asked, "Do you think they'll forget again?" He exhaled. Maybe. But forgetting is different than never knowing. Once they've seen something, really seen it, it sticks. She thought about that. Not just the coach, not just the slap, but the look on every face in the room when she walked back in. She wasn't invisible anymore. 1 week later, the dojo felt different. Not just because the belt on the chair was gone. Not just because the name on the board had been wiped clean. It was something in the silence. A silence that didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt steady. Earned. Nia walked in through the side door, uniform pressed, bag over her shoulder. She bowed to the mat and took her place near the front this time. No one directed her there. She just moved forward, and no one stopped her. The substitute coach smiled but didn't say much. He'd started learning that silence in this place wasn't fear anymore. It was focus. Across the mat, a few kids glanced at her, but not the way they used to. There were no smirks, no lowered heads, no tight smiles hiding disbelief. Just eyes that had learned to look and finally see. After warm-ups, a student raised her hand. "Can we talk?" she asked. The coach stepped back. "Of course." The girl stood, nervous but clear. "I thought we were learning how to fight," she said, "but no one ever taught us how to speak." A boy stood too. "We were told yelling meant power, that if we hit harder, we were stronger." Another chimed in. But when she got hit and didn't yell, that was louder than anything. No one interrupted. No one dismissed it. Another student added, "He said we were weak when we cried. I stayed quiet because I thought I was the only one." Someone walked to the board again, wrote one line under the last. "Power isn't loud, it's real." No one erased that either. After class, Nia stayed back to help clean up. A few students lingered too. They didn't want to leave just yet. The room had become something more than a training hall. It had become a place where they could breathe. Later that evening, at the community center on the other side of town, a new class was forming. No logos, no slogans, just a patch of grass under a wide oak tree. No trophies to win, no ranks to climb. Just practice and purpose. Nia stood in front of a group of younger kids. Her sleeves were rolled slightly, revealing her forearms. She adjusted her stance, demonstrated the same kata she had shown in the dojo weeks before. But this time, no one questioned where she learned it. A small boy in the back lost his balance during a side kick and hit the ground hard. His face twisted, not in pain, but in embarrassment. Nia walked over. She didn't say anything right away. She stood beside him, then repeated the move slowly. He followed. Better this time. She gave him a small nod, then walked on. No big praise, no punishment. Just presence. At the edge of the lawn, under the shade, her grandfather watched. He didn't stand close. He leaned against the bench, arms crossed, hat pulled low. Just far enough not to interfere. Just close enough to make his presence known. He hadn't said anything all morning. He didn't need to. Halfway through the class, a woman from the community board approached him. She whispered about a mentorship program. Something long-term. Something funded. He didn't answer right away, just nodded once and said, "We'll see." Class ended without fanfare. No announcements. Just bows. One of the girls handed Nia a folded piece of paper on her way out. She didn't read it until later. Inside, written in messy handwriting, "Thank you for not quitting." When she got home, the sun had dipped behind the trees. Her grandfather was carrying a box of old gear down the hallway when she stopped him. "Hey," she said. He turned. She held something out. His black belt, still folded, still waiting. "I think I'm ready now," she said. He looked at her for a moment, then smiled, just barely. "No," he said quietly. She blinked. "No?" He stepped closer. "You already were." He didn't take the belt. He let her hold it, then turned and walked away. She stood there a second longer, then went to her room, found an old wooden frame in the closet, opened it, laid the black belt inside, beside the photo of her and him from years ago. Her in braces, him with a slight beard, both smiling like they didn't know what was coming. But they were ready anyway. She set it near the window, where the morning light would find it first. Because honor wasn't something you wore. It was something you passed on. And finally, for the first time in days, she smiled.